Okay, have you ever felt like you're walking on eggshells at work? Like constantly second-guessing yourself, wondering if it's you or if the place is just toxic?
It's more common than you'd think, and it's not always someone screaming in your face. It can be much more subtle than that.
Right, so how do we even define workplace bullying? Because it seems like it's more than just yelling or name-calling.
Exactly. Think of it like a spectrum of behaviors designed to undermine you. It can be blatant, like being publicly humiliated in a meeting, or as subtle as constantly being excluded from important decisions.
So like being micromanaged all the time, or having your ideas dismissed,
Yeah.
or even just feeling watched and judged. That's kind of terrifying.
It is, and incredibly damaging. We categorize bullying into a few types. There's vertical bullying, which is from someone with power over you, like boss. Then there's horizontal bullying, which comes from your peers. And get this, there's even reverse bullying, where someone you supervise tries to bully you.
Wait, reverse bullying? I
Uh-huh.
never even thought about that. I mean, I get the power dynamic thing, but someone below you trying to bully you.
That's wild. It happens more than you think. Power dynamics can get tricky. But to lighten the mood for a sec, let me tell you a quick story. One time I accidentally CC'd the wrong person on a pretty embarrassing email, and this coworker turned it into their personal mission to remind me of it every single day.
Oh no, are you serious? That's brutal.
They'd bring it up in meetings, in the break room, just passing in the hallway.
Some people just thrive on making others squirm. But that brings up a serious point. What kind of impact does this bullying have on people? It can't just be about feeling bad.
You're so right. The impact goes way beyond just hurt feelings. We're talking about real mental, physical, and career
So
consequences.
it's not just in your head, there's actual damage being done.
Absolutely. It's been linked to anxiety, depression, insomnia, even PTSD. And physically, it can show up as headaches, stomach problems, and even heart problems.
That's intense.
Hmm.
It really highlights how we can't just brush this off as part of the job. You know, speaking of personal experience, there was a time when I was dealing with some bullying at work,
Hmm.
and I started doubting everything about myself, my decisions, my skills. Like, was I even cut out for this? It really messes with your head.
That's a classic response. Bullying chips away at your self-esteem. When you're constantly on edge and stressed, it takes a toll on your mind and body.
And what about the impact on your career? Does it affect your performance, your opportunities?
Without a doubt. When you're feeling undermined and demoralized, it's hard to focus and do your best. You hesitate to take on new challenges, you don't speak up. And that can seriously limit your career growth.
It's like this awful cycle. You get bullied, your work suffers, then you get fewer opportunities. It's a recipe for career stagnation.
Exactly. Breaking free from that cycle is tough. That's why understanding why bullying happens in the first place is crucial. Sometimes it's not just about a bad boss or a few toxic
So
coworkers.
you're saying there's often something bigger at play?
Often, yes. Sometimes the entire workplace culture is toxic. Those companies notorious for their cutthroat environments where it's every person for themselves.
Oh, I know exactly the type. The ones that glorify stepping on others to get ahead.
That's the one.
Yeah.
In those cultures, bullying can actually be rewarded. It's twisted.
So it becomes a systemic problem. Like the system itself is encouraging the toxic behavior.
Often, yes. It's about the power dynamics, the unspoken rules, how success is defined within that specific workplace.
It makes you wonder how many workplaces are unknowingly fostering bullying just because of how they're structured.
More than we realize. But let's not forget about the individual level, too. Some people bully because they're deeply insecure. They see your skills, your popularity as a threat, so they try to tear you down to feel better about
It's
themselves.
like they're stuck in high school, still playing those popularity games. Sad, really.
It really is, and it hurts everyone involved. The bully is trapped in this negativity, and the victim suffers the consequences.
So how do we break free from this, both individually and as a society? Because this feels like it goes way beyond just the workplace.
That's the million-dollar question. But the good news is there are things we can do. And it starts with empowering individuals to take control of their own situations.
Okay, let's get practical.
Hmm.
What can someone who's being bullied actually do about it?
I'm all for practical solutions, but sometimes a bit of tough love is needed. So I'm going to ask you and everyone listening a direct question. Are you standing up for yourself when you should? And if not, why? What's holding you back?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think a lot of people hesitate because they're afraid of making things worse, or they don't know how to confront the bully effectively. It can be pretty intimidating.
That's understandable. But here's the thing. Silence often empowers the bully. It tells them their behavior is acceptable. So the first step is finding your voice and building your confidence.
Easier said than done, right?
True, but not impossible. Start by practicing assertive communication. Learn to say no, firmly but respectfully. Role-play difficult conversations with a friend or therapist. Remember, you don't have to be aggressive. Just clear and firm about your boundaries.
Okay, so we're finding our voice. What's next? Because knowing how to say no is one thing. Actually doing it in a tense situation is a whole other beast.
You're right. That's where documentation comes in. This is crucial. Keep a detailed record of every incident. Dates, times, witnesses, specific examples of the bullying. It helps build a case if you need to report it to HR or take legal action.
So we're not talking about being paranoid or keeping tabs on everyone, right? It feels like a delicate balance.
It is. It's about having concrete evidence if you need it. Trust me, having that documentation, even if you never use it, can be incredibly empowering.
I can see how that would give you a sense of control in a situation where you feel powerless. What else can people do to protect themselves? Because documentation is great, but it feels like there's more to it than that.
You're right. Another key strategy is building a support network at work. Identify colleagues you trust, people you can confide in. They can provide emotional support, offer advice, even act as witnesses if needed. Having allies at work makes a world of difference.
Just knowing you're not alone in this can make you feel so much stronger. There's power in numbers.
Absolutely. And speaking of power in numbers, I have a personal story. Early in my career, I was being bullied by a senior colleague. I felt completely helpless. But then I started talking to some trusted coworkers, and it turned out they were going through similar things. Together, we supported each other and eventually confronted the bully as a united front.
Wow, that's amazing.
Sure.
What happened? Did things change?
It wasn't easy, but we presented a strong case to HR, and the bully was reprimanded. More importantly, it taught me the power of speaking up and finding allies. It was a turning point in my career.
That's incredibly inspiring. It shows that even though it's scary, standing up for yourself and finding support can really turn things around. But what about the bigger picture? What can organizations and managers do to combat this? Because it feels like this is a problem that needs to be tackled from multiple angles.
You're absolutely right. While individuals need to empower themselves, organizations need to create a culture where bullying is simply not tolerated.
Okay, so where do they even begin? Because we've all seen those respect in the workplace posters that don't actually seem to change anything.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about action, not just words. Organizations need clear, enforceable policies against bullying and harassment. And these policies need to be communicated widely and consistently.
So everyone knows the rules of the game and what happens if they break them.
Exactly. And it can't be just a policy buried somewhere on the company's website. Make it part of onboarding. Include it in employee handbooks. Have regular training sessions.
Make it unavoidable. So if someone tries to claim ignorance, it won't fly.
Exactly. And you know, one thing that really frustrates me is when organizations have weak or ineffective HR departments.
Oh, don't even get me started. I've heard so many horror stories about HR being more interested in protecting the company than the employees.
It's like, what are they even there for? If they're not advocating for the well-being of the people working there, what's the point?
Seriously. It's like they see their role as minimizing risk, not actually addressing the problem.
It sends the message that bullying is okay, as long as it doesn't create a legal headache for the company, which is so wrong. So if you're a leader, take a good look at your HR department. Are they equipped to handle bullying complaints? Do they have the resources and training? Are they empowered to hold bullies accountable, even if those bullies are high-level executives?
Those are some hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
And it's not just about HR, right? Leadership as a whole needs to set the tone.
Absolutely. Leaders need to walk the walk, model respectful behavior, and make it crystal clear that bullying won't be tolerated. It's not just about punishing bullies after the fact, but actively creating a culture where it can't even take root.
So how do you actually create that kind of culture? Because it seems like it takes more than just saying bullying is bad.
It definitely does. It's about fostering open communication, encouraging collaboration, and celebrating diversity. Create a workplace where people feel safe to speak up, share ideas, and challenge the status quo without fear of retaliation.
That sounds ideal.
Yeah.
But I imagine it takes a lot of work to get there. Like, how do you actually put these ideas into practice?
It does. It's not a quick fix. It's about ongoing effort, consistent messaging, and holding people accountable at every level.
And recognizing that everyone has a role to play. It can't just be leadership pushing this from the top down.
Exactly. If you see someone being bullied, speak up, be an ally, offer support, don't let it slide.
I love that. Be an ally, because sometimes that's all it takes to change things for someone. Just knowing they have someone on their side can give them the courage to stand up for themselves.
You're absolutely right. And sometimes just listening without judgment can be powerful. When you're being bullied, it can feel incredibly isolating. So if you have a colleague going through this, letting them know you believe them and support them can be a lifeline.
That's such an important reminder. We often underestimate the power of just listening and acknowledging someone's experience. It can make a world of difference.
It really can. And it's not just about supporting the victim, it's also about challenging the bully.
How do you do that effectively? Because it can be pretty intimidating to confront someone who's behaving badly, especially if they have power over you.
It can be, but it's not impossible. Sometimes a simple, direct approach works. Something like, hey, that comment was inappropriate. Please don't talk to me like that.
Wow, I admire your directness. But what if they deny it
Yeah.
or try to turn it around on you? Like, what if they say you're being too sensitive?
Then you escalate it. Document the incident, talk to HR, get witnesses involved. Don't let them get away with it.
So you're saying it's about standing your ground and not letting them dismiss your experience?
Exactly. You deserve to be treated with respect, and you have the right to speak up when you're not.
Okay, so we've talked about what individuals can do and what organizations can do. But what about the bigger picture? What can we do as a society to address this? Because it feels like this is a problem that goes way beyond just the workplace.
You're right. This isn't just a workplace problem, it's a societal one. And I think a lot of it comes down to changing our attitudes and beliefs about bullying. We need to stop seeing it as a normal part of life, as something people just have to toughen up and deal with.
It's like we have this weird cultural acceptance of bullying, especially in the workplace.
It's true. And I think part of the problem is that we often mistake bullying for strength. We admire people who are aggressive, ruthless, willing to step on others to get ahead.
It's like we've glamorized the bully. We see these characters in movies and TV shows, and it almost makes it seem cool to be that way.
Exactly. And that's got to change. We need to start valuing empathy, kindness, and respect. We need to celebrate leaders who are collaborative, who empower others, and who create positive and supportive work environments.
I love that vision. A world where empathy and kindness are seen as strengths, not weaknesses.
Right. And where bullying is recognized for what it is, a form of abuse that has no place in a civilized society.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's important to remember that change is possible.
Yeah.
It might be slow, it might be messy, but we can create a better world for ourselves and for future generations.
Absolutely. And one of the things that gives me hope is seeing how many people are speaking out about bullying and demanding change.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
like we're finally reaching a tipping point where people are no longer willing to tolerate this kind of behavior.
Exactly. And that's incredibly powerful because when we speak up, when we share our stories, when we refuse to be silenced, we create a ripple effect that can lead to real lasting change.
That's a beautiful thought. And it reminds me of something you said earlier.
Yeah.
Your workplace doesn't define you, but your response to challenges does.
Yes, that's so important to remember. We all have the power to choose how we react to difficult situations and to create a better path for ourselves and for those around us.
So let's keep talking about this because the conversation is far from over.
Absolutely. And in part two, we'll explore even more strategies for dealing with workplace bullying and creating a more positive and supportive work environment for everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Let's jump right back into our discussion on tackling workplace bullying.
And remember, we're not just talking about surviving this. We're talking about thriving in spite of it. We're diving into real strategies for reclaiming your power and building a better work life.
Absolutely. Last time we focused on empowering individuals, finding your voice, setting boundaries, documenting incidents, and the crucial importance of a support network.
Because even in the most toxic environment, there are steps you can take to protect yourself and shift the dynamics. It's about being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly. Now we're zooming out to the bigger picture. The systemic changes needed to truly address workplace bullying.
Let's talk about what organizations and managers can do to create a healthier, more supportive work environment. Feels like this is where real lasting change can happen.
You're spot on. But first, there needs to be an acknowledgement that bullying exists. It's shocking how often I hear, oh, that's just how it is in this industry, or you need to develop a thicker skin.
It's like they're normalizing abuse, as if enduring bullying is some badge of honor.
It's ridiculous. Bullying is never acceptable no matter the industry. So step one is calling it what it is and making it clear that it won't be tolerated.
Okay, but how do we move beyond lip service? We've all seen the respect in the workplace, posters that gather dust while nothing actually changes.
Those posters need to be backed up with real action. Organizations need clear, enforceable policies against bullying and harassment, and they need to be communicated consistently.
So that everyone understands the rules and the consequences for breaking them. No more hiding behind, oh, I didn't know that wasn't allowed.
Exactly. And these policies can't be buried somewhere in the company's digital abyss. Make them part of onboarding, include them in handbooks, have regular training sessions.
Make them unavoidable. It's like weaving respect into the fabric of the workplace.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of things that bother me, let's talk about weak or ineffective HR departments.
Oh, I think we all have stories about that. It's so disheartening when HR seems more interested in protecting the company than the employees.
It's infuriating. What's the point of an HR department if they're not advocating for the well-being of the people working there?
It's like they see their role as minimizing risk and liability, not actually addressing the human element.
Right. It sends a message that bullying is okay as long as it doesn't create a legal problem for the company, which is so messed up. So if you're a leader, take a good hard look at your HR department.
Mhm.
Are they equipped to handle bullying complaints effectively? Do they have the resources and training they need? And are they empowered to hold bullies accountable, even if those bullies happen to be high-level executives?
Those are tough questions, but essential ones.
Yeah.
It's about making sure HR is a true advocate for employees,
Mhm.
not just a shield for the company.
You nailed it. And it goes beyond. HR leadership at all levels needs to set the tone.
Okay, so how does leadership effectively walk the walk? Because it can't just be about empty words and gestures.
You're right. Leaders need to model respectful behavior and make it crystal clear that bullying is unacceptable. This means not just punishing bullies after the fact, but actively creating a culture where bullying doesn't even stand a chance.
Okay, so how do you build that kind of culture? It sounds almost utopian. Like, how do you actually create a workplace where bullying is unthinkable?
It's not easy, but it's possible. It starts with fostering open communication, encouraging collaboration, and celebrating diversity. It's about creating a workplace where people feel safe to speak up, share their ideas, and challenge the status quo without fear of retribution.
That sounds amazing, but how do you actually put these ideas into practice? What does that look like day to day?
It's about consistent effort and holding people accountable at every level. It's about building trust and making sure people know they'll be heard and respected no matter their position.
And realizing that everyone has a role to play. It can't just be a top-down approach, right? Everyone needs to be an active participant in creating this culture.
Absolutely. It takes a collective effort. If you see something, say something, be an ally. Offer support. Don't let things slide.
I love that. Be an ally. It's such a powerful reminder that we can all make a difference.
Mm.
Sometimes just having someone on your side is enough to give you the courage to speak up and challenge the status quo.
You're so right. And even just listening without judgment can be incredibly powerful. When you're being bullied, it can feel so isolating. So if you have a colleague going through this, letting them know you believe them and that you're there for them can be a lifeline.
It's a reminder that small acts of kindness and support can have a huge impact. We don't always realize how much our words and actions can affect others.
They really can. And,
Yeah.
it's not just about supporting the victim, it's also about challenging the bully.
How do you do that effectively? Because it can be scary to confront someone who's behaving badly, especially if they have power over you.
It can be, but it's not impossible. Sometimes a simple, direct approach can be surprisingly effective. Something like, hey, that comment was inappropriate. Please don't talk to me like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Straightforward and to the point. But what if they deny it? Or try to turn it around on you? What if they say you're being too sensitive or you can't take a joke?
Then you escalate it. Document the incident. Talk to HR. Get witnesses involved. Don't let them dismiss your experience or gaslight you. You have the right to be treated with respect.
It's about standing your ground and not letting them undermine your reality.
Exactly. You deserve to feel safe and respected at work, and you have the right to speak up when that's not happening.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, what individuals can do, what organizations can do, but it feels like there's still a bigger piece to this puzzle. What about societal change? How do we tackle this on a broader level?
It's a big question. This isn't just a workplace issue, it's a societal one. And I think a lot of it comes down to shifting our attitudes and beliefs about bullying. We need to stop seeing it as a normal part of life, as something you just have to toughen up and deal with.
It's like we have this weird cultural acceptance of bullying, especially in the workplace.
It's true. And I think part of the problem is that we often mistake bullying for strength. We admire people who are aggressive, ruthless, willing to step on others to get ahead. We see it in movies, on TV, even in some of our leaders.
It's like we've glamorized the bully.
Well,
It's almost seen as a desirable trait in some circles.
And that needs to change. We need to start valuing empathy, kindness, and respect. We need to celebrate leaders who are collaborative, who empower others and who create positive and supportive work
I
environments.
love that vision. A world where kindness and empathy are seen as strengths, not weaknesses, where being a good person isn't seen as a disadvantage.
Right, and where bullying is recognized for what it is, a form of abuse that has absolutely no place in a healthy society.
It's about creating a world where everyone can thrive and reach their full potential without having to endure this kind of toxic behavior.
Absolutely. And one of the things that gives me hope is seeing how many people are finally speaking out about bullying and demanding change.
Me too.
Mm.
It's like we're reaching a tipping point where people are no longer willing to tolerate it. It's becoming unacceptable, and that's a huge shift.
It's incredibly powerful because when we speak up, when we share our stories, when we refuse to be silenced, we create a ripple effect that can lead to real lasting change.
That's a beautiful thought.
Mm.
And it reminds me of something you said earlier. Your workplace doesn't define you, but your response to challenges does.
Yes, that's so important. We all have the power to choose how we react to difficult situations and to create a better path forward for ourselves and for those around us.
So let's keep this conversation going. There's still so much more to explore.
Absolutely. And in part three, we'll continue to delve deeper into the nuances of workplace bullying and share even more strategies for creating a more positive and supportive work environment for everyone.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're diving into the final part of our deep dive on workplace bullying.
And we're going even deeper this time, exploring some of the less talked about aspects of this issue.
We've covered a lot of ground already, from recognizing those subtle signs of bullying to understanding the impact it has both personally and professionally, and what individuals and organizations can do to combat it.
But there's always more to uncover, right? Like, how do we actually change the game?
Exactly. Today, I really want to focus on the emotional and psychological dynamics at play. It's not just about the actions, but the why behind them.
I'm with you on that. Let's talk about the motivations of the bully and the long-term effects on the people they target. It's about understanding the deeper currents beneath the surface.
Let's start with the bully. What drives someone to engage in this kind of behavior? Because it can't just be about being a bad person.
You're right. It's rarely that simple. Often, bullies are deeply insecure individuals who are projecting their own fears and anxieties onto others.
So it's almost like a defense mechanism. They attack others to protect their own fragile ego.
Exactly. They might feel threatened by your competence, your popularity, or even just your positive attitude. And instead of dealing with these feelings in a healthy way, they lash out. It's a way of trying to dim your light so they can feel brighter.
Wow, that's a powerful image. It's like they're trying to drag you down to their level instead of rising to meet yours.
It's sad, really, and sometimes the bully might not even be fully aware of their motivations. They might convince themselves that they're acting in the best interests of the team or the company.
So they're justifying their behavior even to themselves.
Right. And that's why it's so important to call out their actions, because if you don't, they'll continue to operate under this delusion that what they're doing is okay.
It's about breaking that cycle of denial and making them face the consequences of their actions.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears and talk about the long-term effects on the targets of bullying. We've discussed the immediate impact, but what happens down the road? How does this shape someone's outlook and experiences?
That's what I'm really curious about, because it feels like the wounds from bullying can run deep.
You're right. It can be pretty devastating. Bullying can erode your self-confidence, make you question your abilities, and even lead to chronic anxiety and depression.
It's like a wound that keeps reopening, even years later. You might think you've moved on, but then something triggers those old feelings of self-doubt and insecurity.
That's such a powerful analogy. And it's so true. Even after the bullying has stopped, you might still struggle with trust issues, have difficulty forming healthy relationships, or find yourself constantly second-guessing your decisions.
So it's not something you just get over. It can have a lasting impact on your life.
It absolutely can. It takes time and effort to heal from that kind of emotional and psychological damage. And that's why seeking support is so important. Whether it's therapy support groups or even just talking to trusted friends and family, having that support system can make a world of difference.
Speaking of support, let's talk about the resources available for people who are experiencing workplace bullying. Because it can feel so overwhelming and isolating when you're going through it.
There are some amazing organizations and websites that provide information, advice, and support. And one of the most powerful things you can do is connect with other survivors of bullying.
I can see how that would be incredibly validating, to know you're not alone in this, and to hear other people's stories of resilience and recovery.
Exactly. And it can be so empowering to share strategies, resources, and just offer each other support and encouragement.
And let's not forget about the role of allies. We've touched on this before, but it's worth repeating. If you see someone being bullied, speak up. Don't be a bystander.
Even a small gesture of support can make a huge difference. It could be as simple as saying, hey, that's not cool, or offering to be a witness if the victim decides to report the bullying.
It's about sending the message that you're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior and that the victim is not alone.
And if you're in a position of power, use that power for good. Create a work environment where bullying is simply not tolerated. Implement clear policies, provide training, and make it clear that you're committed to creating a workplace where everyone feels safe and respected.
It's about leading by example and creating a culture of respect from the top down.
You got it. And, this is something we can all work on regardless of our position or title. It's about shifting our mindset, challenging our biases, and choosing kindness and empathy over aggression and dominance.
I love that. Choosing kindness and empathy. It sounds so simple, yet it can be so revolutionary.
It really can. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, and that creating a more humane and supportive world starts with each of us.
So let's make a commitment to ourselves and to each other to create a world where bullying is no longer tolerated. A world where everyone feels valued and respected, and where we can all thrive and reach our full potential.
I'm so on board with that. It's a vision worth fighting for.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into workplace bullying. We hope this conversation has been helpful, insightful, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Remember, you're not alone. There are resources available, and you have the strength to create a better work life for yourself and for those around you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the topics that matter most.
Until then, stay strong. Stay kind and keep speaking your truth.